Offences are committed in this country each year. It's an epidemic.
Check your speed along the motorway. Your average speed has come back in excess of 100 miles an hour. OK.
Racing driver Alan de Cadenet is one of many prepared to admit he regularly breaks the speed limit.
Well, I love speed because I find it exhilarating. I find not just the actual movement itself exhilarating. I like the therapy I get from being in charge of a high-speed projectile that I believe I'm controlling to the best of my ability.
The issue for drivers like him is not to get caught.
The main reason probably why I haven't been done is because I haven't been caught, and I haven't been caught because I'm incredibly, I hope, observant. I am looking in my rearview mirrors at all times. I'm looking up front. I look at side turnings.
Speeding is a criminal offence, but it's not perceived by the public as a crime.
Tomorrow, a case against the actor Hugh Grant, charging him with driving his Mercedes at 98 miles an hour, will be heard at a court in Exeter. Now, it'll be interesting to see whether the publicity for this alleged offence will cause him anything like the same public damage as his US prosecution for lewd behaviour with a prostitute.
Being caught speeding causes little social embarrassment, as the list of famous speeders show. Neil Kinnock was banned for 7 days for driving at 103. He became European Transport Commissioner. Other politician speeders are Deputy Labour leader John Prescott, former Minister Tim Yeo, and Roger Gale MP, who'd been president of his local branch of the Institute of Advanced Motorists. The royals love to speed. The Princess of Wales was given a verbal warning for driving at 50 in London. Prince Edward was cautioned for doing 90 on the motorway. The Princess Royal has been caught 5 times, once at 96 miles an hour. And Prince Michael of Kent, president of the RAC Motorsports Council, has been banned twice for driving at up to 110 miles an hour. It takes the death of someone we know to bring home the dangers of speeding. 13-year-old Jamie Brazier was killed 7 weeks ago. Jamie was getting a lift home in a BMW, travelling along this quiet country lane. He was late home for his tea. The police called at his house.
They explained that there'd been an accident and they thought it was Jamie. And I was just tearing around saying, how bad is it, you know. And they said, well, it was fatal.
The BMW 325i had hit the brow of a hill at an estimated speed of 100 miles an hour. It left the road, cartwheeling down in front of the neighbouring bungalows. The driver was killed instantly. Jamie was thrown through the window of the BMW. He was found lying 30 metres away from the crashed car.
I'll have a wander around now, you know, to see where he is. And you've got one part of your brain saying he's not here anymore, and you've got another part saying you've just had a terrible, terrible dream. That chap has wiped everything in my life out. And to have idiots on the road, and the government are letting it all go by, and yet they're having stupid campaigns that really aren't really worth bothering with.
You're going to kill me.
The government's present campaign is kill your speed before you kill a child.
You're going to kill me because you overslept.
It aims to solve the speeding problem by changing driver attitudes.
You're going to kill me for an appointment. You're going to kill me one day.
The same attitudes, you know, used to be the attitudes we had toward drunk driving. That was in the days when we killed 4 times as many people in drink-related accidents as we do now. In a sense, that's the challenge we have in relation to speed. Kill your speed before you kill a child is actually the theme of much of what we do. And that's, I think, the message that increasingly is getting over.
But the change which really affected drivers' attitudes to drinking was the change in the law. If you're caught drinking and driving, you lose your licence and there are no excuses. But if you're caught speeding, there are no mandatory penalties.
Magistrates have the power to fine motorway speeders up to £2,500, but it's usually no more than 300, even for speeds of over 110 miles an hour. And there's no consistency on whether or not speeding drivers should be disqualified. It's up to the individual magistrate.
people don't understand why a magistrate has passed a particular sentence. They wish it was heavier, and they want to take away the magistrate's discretion. I'm very wary of that, whether it's in the field of speeding or any other form of infraction against the law. The reality is that it's up to the magistrates or the judge to listen to the facts of the case.
Karen Daly's parents say there must be stiffer penalties.
I think the trouble is that a lot of people that can afford these sort of cars actually can afford the fines. And I think it doesn't hit home hard enough. I think that the penalties should be much, much stronger.
Speeding kills more than 1,000 people a year. Road safety experts are now saying it's time to change the cars themselves.
If people cannot use a machine safely, then one changes the machine. In this case, we're talking about cars or motor vehicles more generally. And there are ways of achieving substantial savings by ensuring the vehicle cannot do certain things. Thus, putting speed enablers or speed limiters onto vehicles will stop the driver doing daft things.
Now, I don't think the manufacturers can be held responsible for those that drive the products that they make. We, as manufacturers, discharge our responsibility to make those vehicles as safe as we possibly can, and that we are doing very successfully. In terms of how that car is driven, there can be absolutely no doubt. It has to be the responsibility of the driver.
These same arguments were used to oppose limiters for coaches and lorries, but eventually the government gave up its reliance on changing driver behaviour. From next year, both lorries and coaches will have limiters fitted to their engines. Drivers like Phil Anderson of the Oxford Tube Bus Company are quite happy with the way their speed is now controlled.
There's an actuator that's fitted to the engine that actually pulls back on the cable, the accelerator cable, and cuts down the amount of fuel to the engine, which thereby slows the coach down. And when the speed drops below 65 miles an hour, it allows the fuel back to the engine, and eventually it evens out to 65, and that's your speed. It's something you get used to. When you first go to drive one and you think, I was limited to 65, everybody can do 70, you think it's a pain, but you get used to it and you actually enjoy it. It's more relaxing.
The manufacturers claim the technology to fit such limiters to cars is a long way away.
There is no doubt that in the future, cars will probably be subject to some kind of variable automatic speed limiting device. So they will be allowed to travel at 70 miles an hour in certain conditions, but they will be limited to 30 in others. But we're a long, long way away from that.
In fact, not so long. Earlier this week we went to Gothenburg in Sweden. Here, far from being a thing of the far distant future, speed limiters on cars are already being developed as part of a government road safety campaign.
Technology is already available. Technology is not the problem. The problem is to find the user acceptance for it. And that is both, of course, by the road users. That's the only customer you have.
Just off a main city street, this unassuming building is home to the experimental project. Maximum speed limits are set on a computer system based on factors like weather conditions and traffic flow. A roadside beacon sends instructions by microwave signal to passing cars. The signals are received by the car's cruise control systems. They set a limit to the speed the cars can do.
This is a cooperation between the road manufacturers, the suppliers of electronic equipment, and the road administration. And we are together developing the technology and looking at different ways of introducing it.
In Sweden, they've accepted that it will never be enough to rely on drivers to keep within the speed limits. New ideas are needed.
The speed limits is not a good way of getting people to accept and getting the responsibility for driving.
But in Britain, we're still relying on traditional methods of controlling speeding cars. The mothers of children who've been killed in high-speed accidents say that's just not enough.
They should emphasise about these fast cars. They can go, Mummy and Daddy have got the money, they can pass the test one day, they can go buy one of these big fast cars, go showing off, and OK, they might get out of it alive, but what about everybody else on the road?
I certainly hope that people will listen to us. I hope that it will make people realise how devastating it can be to have a child killed, to have one's offspring killed by speed.
Jamie Brazier's friends still visit his grave. These children have learnt the tragic cost of granting drivers the freedom to speed in high-powered cars on our roads. But how long will it take for the adults of Britain to learn the lesson about such lethal weapons?